The blood trail led Katherine Nelson straight to the most beautiful man she had ever seen dying under the cottonwood tree. His chest barely rising with shallow breaths that seemed to cost him everything. His horse stood nearby, exhausted and trembling, as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the New Mexico desert in June of 1882. Katherine had been riding back to her small homestead outside Hamilton when she spotted the vultures circling overhead, their dark wings cutting lazy patterns against the brilliant blue sky. She dismounted quickly, her practical brown riding skirt swirling dust as she rushed to the man's side. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair matted with sweat and blood. A bullet wound had torn through his left shoulder, and another had grazed his ribs. His shirt was soaked crimson, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. "Mister, can you hear me?" Katherine pressed her fingers to his neck, feeling the faint, thready pulse beneath his sun-bronzed skin. He did not respond, his eyes closed, his face pale beneath the dust and blood. She worked quickly, years of frontier living having taught her to think fast and act faster. At 22, Katherine had been on her own for 3 years since her father died of pneumonia, leaving her the small cattle ranch he had built from nothing. She tore strips from her petticoat, pressing them against his wounds to slow the bleeding. The man groaned but did not wake. Getting him onto her horse proved nearly impossible. He was tall and muscular, easily over 6 feet, and pure deadweight in his unconscious state. Katherine grunted with effort, using every ounce of strength she possessed to hoist him across her mare's back. His horse followed as she led both animals slowly toward home, praying she would not be too late. Her homestead appeared on the horizon after what felt like hours. The small adobe house stood alone against the vast landscape, with a barn and corral beside it. She had built a life here through sheer determination, tending her modest herd of cattle and selling what she could in Hamilton, 10 miles east. Katherine managed to get the stranger inside, half dragging him through the door and onto her bed. She lit every lamp she had, needing the light to work. With scissors, she cut away his shirt, revealing the full extent of his injuries. The shoulder wound was deep, the bullet still lodged inside. The rib graze was less serious but still bleeding steadily. She had helped her father tend wounded men before, cowboys hurt in roundups, men kicked by horses or gored by steers. She sterilized her father's old surgical knife in the fire, poured whiskey over the blade and her hands, and began the delicate work of extracting the bullet. The man thrashed and cried out but never fully woke. Katherine worked by lamplight, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. When she finally pulled the misshapen lead from his shoulder, relief flooded through her. She cleaned both wounds thoroughly with whiskey, then stitched them closed with the same thread she used for mending clothes. Her stitches were neat and small, something she took pride in. After bandaging him with clean strips of linen, she covered him with quilts and collapsed into the chair beside the bed, exhausted. For 3 days, Katherine tended him while fever ravaged his body. She sponged his forehead with cool water, forced broth between his lips when she could, and changed his bandages regularly. The wounds showed no signs of infection, which she considered a small miracle. She slept in snatches, always alert for any change in his condition. On the 4th morning, as pale sunlight streamed through the window, his eyes opened. They were the color of slate, gray and stormy, focusing slowly on her face as she leaned over to check his bandages. "You are awake," Katherine said softly, relief evident in her voice. "Thank God." "How do you feel?" The man stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to piece together where he was and how he had gotten there. His voice when he spoke was rough, barely above a whisper. You saved my life. I found you under a cottonwood tree, half dead from bullet wounds. What happened to you? He tried to sit up, but pain lanced through him and he fell back against the pillows with a groan. Ambushed. 3 men. I was riding from Santa Fe with my wages from a cattle drive. He paused, breathing hard. They took everything. Do not try to move yet. You lost a lot of blood. Katherine helped him drink some water, supporting his head gently. What is your name? Bennett Irving. People call me Ben. He looked at her with those intense gray eyes. What is yours? Katherine Nelson. I live here alone. Ben's brow furrowed slightly. That is dangerous for a woman on her own. I manage. There was steel in her voice, a determination born of 3 years of proving herself capable. Over the following days, Ben grew stronger. Katherine helped him sit up, then stand, then walk around the small house. He was a quiet man, watchful and polite, always thanking her for the smallest kindnesses. She learned he was 26, originally from Texas, and had been working cattle drives for the past 8 years. He had no family left. His parents dead from cholera when he was 16, his only brother killed in a range war in Wyoming. As his strength returned, Ben insisted on helping around the homestead despite Katherine's protests. He fed the chickens, carrying the bucket in his good arm. He checked the fences around the corral, making note of repairs needed. He was gentle with the animals, she noticed, speaking softly to her horses and the few cows she kept near the house. 2 weeks after Katherine found him, Ben was sitting at her small kitchen table, eating the stew she had prepared, when he set down his spoon and looked at her with an expression so serious it made her heart skip. I owe you my life, Katherine, he said quietly. If you had not found me, I would be dead and buried in the desert, forgotten. You nursed me back from the edge of death, used your supplies, your time, your care. He paused, taking a deep breath. I owe you everything, so I am giving it to you. Take my life. It is yours now. Katherine stared at him, her blue eyes wide with surprise. What are you saying? I am saying I will stay here and work for you, help you run this place, protect you. I will give you every day I have left as payment for the life you gave back to me. His voice was steady, certain. You are alone out here. You need help whether you want to admit it or not. Let me be that help. Ben, you do not owe me anything. I did what any decent person would do. But not everyone would have done it, he countered. Not everyone would have risked bringing a stranger into their home, using precious medicine and supplies, losing sleep to tend wounds. You did. And I am not the kind of man who forgets a debt like that. Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest, an emotion she could not quite name. She had been alone for so long, carrying the weight of the homestead entirely on her shoulders. The thought of having help, of having someone to share the burden with, was almost too good to believe. If you stay, it will be as a partner, not as payment of some imagined debt, she said firmly. This ranch needs work. If you are willing to help build it up, we can share in whatever success comes. Ben extended his right hand across the table, his wounded left arm still bound in a sling. Partners, then. Katherine shook his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Partners. That night, Katherine lay in her bedroll on the floor. She had given Ben the bed while he recovered and stared at the dark ceiling. Having a man in the house felt strange after so long alone, but not uncomfortable. Ben was respectful, quiet, and hardworking despite his injuries. She found herself listening to his breathing in the darkness, steady and reassuring, and realized she felt safer than she had in years. As summer deepened, and the New Mexico sun blazed overhead, Ben healed and the partnership took shape. He moved into the barn, creating a small sleeping area for himself among the hay bales, insisting Katherine keep the house. Together they repaired fences, mended the barn roof, and moved the cattle to better grazing. Ben proved to be an excellent horseman and cattleman, his years on the trail evident in everything he did. Katherine found herself watching him more than she should. The way he moved, fluid and confident despite the healing wounds. The rare smile that transformed his serious face. The gentleness in his hands when he worked with the animals or helped her with a difficult task. She caught him watching her too, his gray eyes following her movements as she worked around the homestead. One evening in late July, they rode out to check on the small herd grazing near the river. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the air was finally cooling after another scorching day. They sat on their horses side by side, watching the cattle settle for the night. "I never thought I would have anything like this," Ben said quietly. "A place to belong, work that matters, someone to share it with." Katherine turned to look at him, her heart beating faster. "Is that what you have here, a place to belong, if you will let me stay?" He met her gaze, and she saw vulnerability there, a fear of rejection that touched something deep inside her. "I want you to stay," she said softly. "I cannot imagine this place without you anymore." They rode back in companionable silence as stars began to appear overhead, but something had shifted between them. The air felt charged with possibility, with feelings neither of them had quite voiced yet. August brought a crisis that tested their growing partnership. A group of rustlers hit several ranches in the area, stealing cattle in the night and disappearing into the Badlands. When Katherine and Ben discovered 15 of their cattle missing one morning, the loss hit hard. It represented a significant portion of their small herd, money they needed to get through the winter. "We are going after them," Ben said, checking his revolver with grim determination. His wounds had healed well, leaving scars but no lasting damage. "We do not even know which way they went," Katherine protested, though she was already saddling her horse. "I can track them." Ben's eyes were hard, the easygoing cowboy replaced by something harder, more dangerous. "I spent 2 years hunting rustlers in Texas. I know how these men think." They picked up the trail heading south into the wilderness. The rustlers had been careless, leaving plenty of signs. Ben read the tracks like a book, pointing out where the men had stopped to rest, where one horse had thrown a shoe, how many riders they were following. By mid-afternoon, they spotted the rustlers' camp in a narrow canyon. 5 men sat around a fire, the stolen cattle penned in a makeshift corral. Ben and Katherine tethered their horses and crept closer on foot. "We are outnumbered," Katherine whispered. "We should go back and get the sheriff." "Hamilton is a full day's ride. By the time we return, they will be gone." Ben studied the layout carefully. "But I have an idea. Can you handle a gun? My father taught me." "Good. Here is what we are going to do." Ben's plan was simple but risky. He would approach from the south, drawing their attention, while Katherine stampeded the cattle from the north, creating chaos. In the confusion, they would take back what was theirs and disappear before the rustlers could organize a pursuit. Katherine's heart pounded as she made her way around the canyon rim. She found a position above the makeshift corral, gathering rocks and preparing to make as much noise as possible. Below, she saw Ben step into view, his revolver drawn. "Those cattle do not belong to you," Ben called out, his voice carrying clearly in the canyon. "I am taking them back." The rustlers jumped up, reaching for their weapons. Katherine did not wait to see more. She began throwing rocks and screaming, creating a terrible racket. The cattle, already nervous in the unfamiliar pen, panicked. They hit the flimsy fence and burst through, stampeding directly toward the rustlers' camp. Men scattered, shouting and diving for cover. Katherine fired her rifle into the air, adding to the chaos. Ben used the confusion to cut around the stampede, gathering the cattle and driving them toward the canyon mouth. Katherine scrambled down to join him, her horse racing to catch up. They drove the cattle hard, not stopping until they were miles away and the sun was setting. Only then did they slow, both breathing hard, looking at each other across the backs of the milling cows. "That was the craziest thing I have ever done," Katherine said, and then she started laughing, giddy with relief and adrenaline. Ben grinned, a rare, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. "You were magnificent." They got the cattle home well after dark, exhausted but triumphant. As they put the animals into the corral, their hands brushed and Ben caught her fingers, holding on. "You could have been killed today," he said quietly. "I should not have asked you to take that risk." "You did not ask, I chose." Katherine squeezed his hand. "We are partners, remember? That means we face things together." Ben pulled her closer, his eyes searching hers in the moonlight. "Katherine, I need to tell you something. These past months, working beside you, building something with you, I have felt more at home than I ever have in my life. And it is not just the ranch." He took a deep breath. "It is you. I have fallen in love with you." Katherine's breath caught. She had known her own feelings for weeks now, but had been afraid to voice them, afraid to risk the partnership they had built. "Ben, I love you too. I think I have since you first insisted on helping around the homestead, stubborn and wounded as you were." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheeks gently. "Are you certain? I have nothing to offer you except hard work and a troubled past. You have everything I want." She rose on her toes and kissed him, gentle and sweet, a promise of more to come. Ben kissed her back, tender and careful as if she were something precious. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I want to do this right," Ben said. "I want to court you properly, marry you if you will have me." "I will have you," Katherine said, laughing. "But yes, let us do this right." The courtship that followed was sweet despite the hard work of ranch life. Ben picked wildflowers and left them on the kitchen table. Katherine made his favorite meals and mended his clothes with extra care. They sat together in the evenings, talking about their dreams for the ranch, for their future together. Ben told her stories of his years on the trail, the places he had seen, the adventures he had survived. Katherine shared memories of her father, her childhood on the ranch, the loneliness of the past 3 years. On a September evening, with the first hint of autumn in the air, Ben asked Katherine to ride out to a spot he had found near the river. They arrived at sunset to find he had laid out a blanket and prepared a simple meal from their supplies. "I know I already asked you in a way," Ben said as they sat watching the last light fade from the sky. "But I want to ask you properly." He pulled out a ring, simple silver with a small turquoise stone. "I had this made in Hamilton last week. Katherine Nelson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled Katherine's eyes as she looked at the ring, then at Ben's face, so full of hope and love. "Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, deeper this time, with passion held carefully in check. Katherine kissed him back, pouring all her love and desire into it, feeling his arms come around her and hold her close. They were married in Hamilton on a bright October morning, with half the town in attendance. The small church was full of ranchers and townspeople who had come to know and respect Katherine over the years, and who welcomed Ben as one of their own. Katherine wore her mother's white dress, carefully preserved in a trunk, and carried wildflowers. Ben wore new clothes bought specially for the occasion, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes shining as he watched his bride walk down the aisle. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ben kissed Katherine with such joy that the congregation burst into applause and laughter. The celebration afterward at the town hall lasted well into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than Katherine had seen in years. As they rode home under a sky full of stars, Ben kept his arm around Katherine, pulling her close against him on the wagon seat. "Happy, Mrs. Irving?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible, Mr. Irving." That night, in the house that was now truly theirs together, they came together as husband and wife. Ben was tender and patient, taking his time, making sure Katherine felt loved and cherished. She responded to his touch with wonder, discovering the depths of passion and connection that had been growing between them for months. They loved each other through the night, learning each other's bodies, speaking promises and endearments in the darkness. In the morning, Katherine woke wrapped in Ben's arms, feeling safe and complete in a way she never had before. He stirred as she moved, kissing her forehead gently. "Good morning, wife," he murmured. "Good morning, husband." They lay together watching the sunrise through the window, making lazy plans for the day, for the week, for the rest of their lives. The years that followed were good ones. Ben and Katherine built the ranch into a thriving operation, expanding their herd and improving their grazing land. They worked side by side every day, partners in every sense of the word. The love between them only deepened, built on mutual respect, shared labor, and genuine affection. In the spring of 1884, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Ben on a warm April evening as they sat on the porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold. "We are going to have a baby," she said simply, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat belly. Ben's face transformed, joy and wonder and a touch of fear crossing his features. "A baby? Are you certain?" "I am certain." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "I am going to be a father. We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Katherine asked, though she could see the answer in his face. Happy does not even begin to describe it. He kissed her softly. "Thank you. Thank you for saving my life, for loving me, for giving me a family. I never thought I would have any of this." Their son was born in December, a healthy, loud baby boy they named Daniel Bennett Irving. Ben cried when he first held his son, tears of pure joy streaming down his face. Katherine watched her husband with their baby and felt her heart might burst from happiness. "He is perfect," Ben whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. "He is absolutely perfect." Daniel was a year old when Katherine became pregnant again. Their daughter, Sarah, was born in the fall of 1886, with her mother's blue eyes and her father's dark hair. Ben was just as overcome with emotion, declaring her the most beautiful baby girl in all of New Mexico. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered, allowing them to hire help during busy seasons. Ben proved to be a wonderful father, patient and playful with the children, teaching them to ride and care for animals as soon as they were old enough. Katherine managed the household and continued to work the ranch, her children often with her, learning the business from the ground up. In 1889, when Daniel was 5 and Sarah was 3, Katherine gave birth to twin boys, James and Thomas. The household became even more chaotic and joyful, full of children's laughter and the organized chaos of a growing family. One evening, after getting all 4 children to bed, Ben and Katherine collapsed onto the porch swing together, exhausted but content. "Sometimes I think back to that day I woke up and saw you leaning over me," Ben said, his arm around Katherine's shoulders. "I was half dead, had nothing to my name, no prospects, no future, and you gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Katherine corrected, leaning into him. "I was alone, struggling, afraid I would lose the ranch. You helped me save it. You gave me love, a family, a real partnership." "I meant what I said that day," Ben continued. When I told you my life was yours, I meant it. Every day since then has been a gift I never expected to receive. Katherine turned to kiss him, soft and sweet. And every day I thank God I found you under that cottonwood tree. They sat together in the comfortable silence of two people completely at ease with each other, watching the stars appear one by one over the desert they both loved. As the 1890s progressed, the Irving Ranch became one of the most successful operations in the territory. Daniel grew into a responsible young man who loved working cattle, while Sarah showed an unexpected talent for horse training. The twins were still young but already showed the same work ethic and love of ranch life as their older siblings. Ben and Katherine aged gracefully together, their love evident in every glance, every touch, every quiet conversation. They still worked side by side most days, though now they had capable help and could afford to take an occasional day off. They used those rare free days to ride out to their favorite spots, reliving memories and making new ones. In 1895, when Katherine was 35 and Ben was 38, they added a fifth child to their family, a daughter they named Elizabeth. The older children doted on their baby sister, and Ben joked that he was outnumbered by women now. "I would not have it any other way," he said, bouncing baby Elizabeth on his knee while Katherine looked on with amusement. The older children grew and eventually started families of their own. Daniel married a schoolteacher from Hamilton and built a house on the eastern portion of the ranch. Sarah fell in love with a young rancher from a neighboring property, and their marriage united two successful operations. The twins went into business together, buying land to the south and starting their own cattle operation. Through it all, Ben and Katherine remained at the heart of it, the foundation upon which everything else was built. They celebrated grandchildren and mourned losses, weathered droughts and economic downturns, and continued to love each other with the same passion and devotion they had discovered that first year. On a summer evening in 1912, 30 years after Katherine had found Ben dying under a cottonwood tree, they sat together on their porch watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Ben was 65 now, his dark hair silver, his face lined with years of sun and wind and laughter. Katherine was 52, still beautiful to him, still the woman who had saved his life and given him everything worth having. "You ever regret it?" Ben asked suddenly. "Taking in a wounded stranger all those years ago?" Katherine looked at him with surprise and amusement. "How could I possibly regret the best decision I ever made? You gave me a life beyond anything I could have imagined, a real partnership, a family, love that has lasted through everything." "I am the one who received everything," Ben insisted, as he always did when this conversation came up. "You saved my life, and you gave me yours just like you promised," Katherine said, taking his hand. "Every single day for 30 years you have kept that promise. You have been my partner, my best friend, my love. You have given me children and grandchildren, helped me build something lasting and good. How could I want anything more?" Ben raised her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "I love you, Katherine Irving. I have loved you since the day I woke up and saw your face. I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Bennett Irving. Always." Their youngest daughter, Elizabeth, now 17, came out onto the porch with glasses of lemonade for them both. She smiled at her parents, seeing them holding hands as they always did. "You two are the most romantic people I know," she said, handing them the glasses. "Your father is a romantic," Katherine said with a smile. "He leaves me flowers and love notes even now." "Only because you deserve them," Ben replied. "And because after 30 years I still want to court you." Elizabeth laughed and went back inside, leaving them alone again. The grandchildren's shouts of laughter drifted across the yard as they chased each other in some game only they understood. The sun was setting, painting the New Mexico sky in brilliant colors, and a gentle breeze brought relief from the heat of the day. "We built a good life," Katherine said softly. "Against all odds, we built something wonderful." "We did," Ben agreed, "and we did it together." They sat in comfortable silence, as they had so many evenings before, watching the light fade and the stars emerge. Around them, the ranch they had built together hummed with life and activity, with family and love and the promise of future generations. The land stretched out in all directions, harsh and beautiful, the same desert where Katherine had found Ben so many years ago and made the choice that changed both their lives forever. Inside the house, family gathered for supper, calling for Ben and Katherine to join them. They rose slowly, Ben's arm around Katherine's waist, and walked inside together. The dining room table was crowded with children and grandchildren, with food and conversation and laughter. This was what they had built from that first moment of connection, that first choice to help a wounded stranger. As the meal progressed, surrounded by family and love, Ben caught Katherine's eye across the table and smiled. She smiled back, and in that moment, everything they had been through, everything they had built together, every challenge overcome and joy shared, passed between them in a single glance. Later that night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Ben and Katherine prepared for sleep in the room they had shared for 30 years. Ben helped Katherine with the buttons on her dress, as he still did, a nightly ritual of care and intimacy. She helped him with his boots, pulling them off and setting them aside. They climbed into bed together, and Ben pulled Katherine close, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. This was how they slept every night, wrapped around each other, as close as two people could be. "Do you remember the first time I slept in this bed?" Ben asked quietly. "When I woke up and saw you sitting in that chair, exhausted from nursing me, I remember. I was so afraid you would die. I prayed harder than I ever had, begging God not to let you slip away. And I woke up and saw an angel," Ben said. "The most beautiful woman I had ever seen, who had saved my life for no reason except that it was the right thing to do." "I saw a man who needed help," Katherine said. "I had no idea I was saving the love of my life." They lay together in the darkness, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the cottonwoods Ben had planted near the house years ago. In the room next door, they could hear Elizabeth's soft breathing. In the house Daniel had built, their son slept with his wife and children. Across the ranch, their other children were settling down for the night in their own homes, built on land that would belong to the Irving family for generations to come. "We did it," Katherine whispered. "We built a legacy." "We built a family," Ben corrected. "We built love. That is the real legacy." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges as they always did. The world was modernizing, automobiles beginning to replace horses, telephones connecting distant places, new technologies transforming even ranch life. But the core of what Ben and Katherine had built remained solid and strong, rooted in the land and in their love for each other. In 1918, as World War I ended, and Daniel's oldest son prepared to come home from the fighting in Europe, Ben and Katherine celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary. The whole family gathered at the main house for a party, with music and dancing and a feast prepared by 3 generations of Irving women working together. Ben, now 71 but still strong and active, led Katherine in a waltz on the wooden floor of the front room while their children and grandchildren looked on. He held her close, moving with the grace of long practice, his eyes never leaving hers. "Still the most beautiful woman in New Mexico," he murmured. "And you are still the most handsome man," Katherine replied, laughing. "Even with that silver hair." "You gave me that silver hair," Ben teased. 36 years of keeping up with you. And you loved every minute of it. Every single one." As the party wound down and family members began heading home, Elizabeth, now 23 and recently engaged to a young lawyer from Santa Fe, found her parents standing on the porch in their usual spot. "I hope my marriage is like yours," she said, standing between them. "You two still look at each other like newlyweds." "The secret," Ben said, pulling both Katherine and Elizabeth close, "is to choose to love each other every single day, to be partners in everything, to never forget what brought you together in the first place." "Your father and I built everything we have from nothing," Katherine added. "We faced hard times and good times, and we faced them together. That is what marriage should be." Elizabeth kissed them both and went inside, leaving her parents alone once more. They stood together in the cool evening air, Ben's arm around Katherine, looking out at the land they had made their own through years of hard work and dedication. "You think we will have many more years like this?" Katherine asked. It was not a morbid question, just a practical one. They were both getting older, and though they were still healthy and active, they were realistic about the future. "I hope so," Ben said. "But however many we have, I will spend every one of them loving you. That is all I need." They did have more years, blessed years filled with more grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. Ben remained active on the ranch well into his 70s, still riding out to check cattle, still working alongside his sons and grandsons. Katherine continued to manage the household and the business side of the ranch, her mind as sharp as ever, her organizational skills still unmatched. In the spring of 1925, at the age of 78, Ben took ill. It started as a simple cold but developed into pneumonia. Katherine nursed him as she had 43 years earlier when she had first saved his life, sitting by his bedside through long nights, sponging his forehead, forcing medicine and broth between his lips. One night, as the fever raged, Ben took her hand and held it tight. "You saved me once before," he whispered. "When I was dying under that tree, you gave me a whole lifetime I never would have had. If this is my time, Katherine, I have no regrets. You gave me everything." "You are not dying," Katherine said fiercely, though tears streamed down her face. "I did not save you just to lose you now. You promised me your life, Bennett Irving. I am not done with it yet." Ben smiled weakly. "Still ordering me around after all these years." "Someone has to." Whether it was Katherine's nursing, Ben's stubborn will to live, or simple luck, the fever broke 2 days later. Ben recovered slowly but surely, gaining strength week by week. By summer, he was back on his feet, though Katherine made him promise to take things easier. "I am getting too old for this," Ben admitted one day as he rested on the porch, watching younger family members work cattle in the distance. "We both are," Katherine said, sitting beside him. She was 65 now, her blonde hair turned white, her face lined with years but still beautiful to him. "But we have earned our rest. Let the younger generation do the heavy lifting now." They settled into a gentler pace of life, still active but no longer carrying the weight of running the entire operation. Daniel had taken over as the primary manager of the ranch years ago, with his siblings all contributing. Ben and Katherine became the beloved matriarch and patriarch of a sprawling family empire, dispensing wisdom and love in equal measure. On quiet evenings, they still sat on their porch swing, holding hands and watching the sunset. They told each other the same stories they had told 100 times before, finding comfort in the familiar narratives of their shared life. Sometimes grandchildren or great-grandchildren would join them, listening to tales of the old days, of how Grandma Katherine had saved Grandpa Ben's life, and how that one act of compassion had led to everything they all took for granted now. In the summer of 1928, Ben and Katherine celebrated their 46th wedding anniversary. The family threw a massive party with relatives coming from all over New Mexico and beyond. There were over 80 people in attendance, all of them descended from or connected to Ben and Katherine in some way. As the celebration reached its peak, Daniel called for everyone's attention. He stood with his arm around his father's shoulders, his own sons and daughters gathered around. "I want to say something about my parents," Daniel began, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Most of you know the story of how they met, how Mom found Dad dying in the desert and saved his life, how he told her he owed her his life and she could have it, how they built this ranch and this family from nothing but hard work and love." He paused, emotion thick in his voice. "What you might not know is that every single day, I have watched them live up to those first promises. Dad gave Mom his life, and he has spent every day since proving it. Mom saved Dad's life, and she has continued to save him, to save all of us, with her strength and wisdom and love. They have shown us all what a real marriage looks like, what real partnership means, what it looks like to build something lasting." There was not a dry eye in the crowd as Daniel raised his glass. "To Ben and Katherine Irving, the best parents, the best grandparents, the best example anyone could ask for, may we all love as truly as they do." "To Ben and Katherine," the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Ben pulled Katherine close and kissed her soundly, to the cheers and applause of their assembled family. When they broke apart, both were crying and smiling at the same time. "I love you," Ben said, just for her. "Every day more than the day before." "I love you too," Katherine replied. "Always and forever." The years rolled on, as years do. The ranch continued to prosper under Daniel's management, expanding and modernizing while staying true to the principles Ben and Katherine had established. The family continued to grow, new babies arriving regularly, new marriages expanding the Irving clan even further. Ben and Katherine grew old together with grace and dignity. They moved more slowly, tired more easily, but their love remained as strong as ever. They still held hands wherever they went. Ben still picked wildflowers for Katherine, and she still made his favorite meals. They were rarely seen apart, two halves of a whole that had been forged in the crucible of the New Mexico desert so many years ago. In the spring of 1932, at the age of 85, Ben passed away peacefully in his sleep, his head on Katherine's shoulder as it had been for 50 years of nights. She woke to find him gone, slipped away so gently she had not even felt him leave. The grief that followed was profound. Katherine had lost the love of her life, her partner in everything, the man who had given her his life and kept that promise every single day for half a century. The funeral was attended by hundreds, a testament to the life Ben had lived and the family he had built. But Katherine did not crumble under the weight of her grief. She was 82 years old and had lived through too much to give up now. She mourned Ben deeply, but she also celebrated the extraordinary life they had shared. She surrounded herself with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them living proof of the love Ben and Katherine had shared. She lived 4 more years, active and engaged until the very end. She taught her great-grandchildren to ride, shared stories of the old days, and continued to offer wisdom and guidance to anyone who asked. But everyone could see that part of her had gone with Ben, that she was waiting patiently to join him again. On an October evening in 1936, Katherine passed away sitting in her favorite spot on the porch, looking out at the sunset over the desert she had loved her entire life. She was 86 years old, surrounded by family, peaceful, and ready to rejoin the man she had loved for more than 50 years. They buried her beside Ben on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the cottonwood trees that reminded them both of the day they met. The whole family gathered, 4 generations standing together, bound by the love of 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Daniel, now an old man himself with grandchildren of his own, stood at his parents' graves and spoke one last time about their legacy. "My mother saved my father's life in the summer of 1882, he said. "She found him dying and chose to help him, not knowing what that choice would lead to. My father gave her his life in return, promising to spend every day proving his gratitude. What they built from that foundation was extraordinary. A successful ranch, yes, but more importantly, a family bound together by love and respect and the example they set every single day." He looked around at the assembled crowd, at the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, at the ranch spreading out below them. "They taught us that love is a choice you make every day. That partnership means truly sharing your life, the hard parts and the good parts. That family is the most important thing you can build. They gave us everything, and the best way we can honor them is to live the way they lived, to love the way they loved." As the sun set over the New Mexico desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, just as it had that night Ben and Katherine got engaged so many years ago, the family stood together in silence. They were standing on land that would belong to the Irving family for generations to come, built on the foundation of 2 people who had loved each other truly and completely. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the legacy of Ben and Katherine. Their great-grandchildren told their children about the grandmother who had saved a dying cowboy and the grandfather who had given his life to her in return. The story became legend in the family, a reminder of where they came from and what they were built on. And on quiet evenings, when the family gathered on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset over the desert, they could almost feel the presence of Ben and Katherine still there, still holding hands, still looking out at the land they had tamed together, still loving each other as they always had and always would. The cottonwood tree where Katherine had found Ben still stood decades later, grown massive and strong, its roots deep in the earth. Someone in the family, no one remembered who, had carved initials into the trunk years ago, Bai and KN, with a heart around them. The carving was old now, grown wide with the tree's growth, but still visible to anyone who looked. It stood as a monument to a love story that began with one woman's compassion and one man's gratitude, and blossomed into something that lasted a lifetime and beyond. It was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the most unexpected ways, with a choice to help a stranger, with a promise freely given, with 2 people deciding to build a life together one day at a time. Ben and Katherine Irving had done exactly that, and in doing so, they had created a legacy of love that would endure for generations. Their story, told and retold by their descendants, remained a powerful reminder of what love could accomplish when it was built on a foundation of partnership, respect, and unwavering commitment. In the end, Ben had been right that day in Katherine's kitchen when he told her he owed her his life. But Katherine had been right too when she said they gave each other everything. They had saved each other, not just once but every day they spent together. And in saving each other, they had created something far greater than either of them could have built alone, a love story that transcended time and became the foundation for generations of family, prosperity, and enduring love. The desert wind still blew across the ranch on quiet evenings, whispering through the cottonwood trees, carrying echoes of laughter and love from years long past. And if you listened carefully, standing in just the right spot at just the right time, you might hear the ghost of Catherine's laughter mixing with Ben's low voice. Forever intertwined, forever in love, forever home in the land they had made their own through a lifetime of devotion to each other and the family they had built together.